not applaud. Do not make any noises. Do not try to interrupt one candidate, whether you disagree or agree with one. Please do not do that. Remember to let the candidates, it's all about the candidates. It's not about me, it's not about you. It's about the candidates and the people that are going to be listening, watching, and sitting in here on the decision that they're going to be making in the upcoming election. Also, the restrooms are just outside if you're not familiar with the community room here at Intercounty. And we appreciate them, by the way, for letting us do this. We appreciate them very, very much. And so, the next time you go to pay your electric bill, put a little extra in there, and they'd appreciate that. And let's see. This will be broadcast on AM 1230 WHIR. It will be on also AM 1420 WHBN, 99.5 WHBN, which is a Harrisburg radio stations, and 103.9 FM in Danville. It will also be broadcast on Facebook, and you will be able to hear the audio of tonight's rebroadcast anytime you want. You can go to hometownlive.net, and you can get the information there and to listen and to download. And Joe is going to be coming up here in just a moment to also give some more instructions on this. I have talked with the candidates. They understand there's no pulling no hair, no, can't elbow each other, and none of those little snide remarks that they really want to. They can't say those. You can't expecting that, of course. Um, is anyone here now that you will not be able to present questions tonight? The questions have already been given to the candidates. They just don't know what order those questions are going to be asked in. But there will be no questions or volunteer statements from the audience of any way, shape, or form. Also, if you will please wait until it is completely over before you give an applause. And we'll be applauding for both candidates at the end of our broadcast or the end of our meeting this evening. And Joe Myers, by the way, Joe Myers, I didn't know Joe till a couple of weeks ago, and I still don't know him. No, he is a very fine man. He's a great person. He's dedicated, and he has a few words that he would like to say to you this evening before we get this broadcast started. Joe?
Thank you, Charlie. I wanted to also let you know that you're being live streamed on Facebook through the Harrodsburg Herald tonight, too, so there will be folks who will see us as well as hear us. The candidates have presented material back there. We are not in a hurry to get out of here tonight. I don't know what they want to do after this, but please, this is an opportunity for them to share information with you through this format, and they are here, so if they are available, we certainly welcome that opportunity as well. And Charlie, thank you very much, and we're ready to go.
Okay, again, let me introduce myself to you guys. I am a Charlie Perry, recently retired radio broadcaster, and I appreciate very much on each of you, the candidates, agreeing for me to be the moderator tonight. I know both of you. You're very respectable and fine citizens, and whatever the decision that the county, Boyle and Mercer make, there's going to be a winner in this race, and I really appreciate you all, and we'll be going with our questions here in just a moment. Again, we appreciate Hometown Radio, Robert Wagner, General Manager of Hometown Radio Network, and for allowing us to be broadcast live this evening. And want to welcome you to the 50th Judicial District Judge Candidates Forum, and it's brought to you by the Boyle County Justice Advocates and their community partners, the Danville-Boyle County Chamber of Commerce. Now, the 50th Judicial District serves Mercer and Boyle counties. Now, Boyle Justice Advocates is a voluntary community group of local citizens that includes attorneys and non-attorneys concerned about the fairness and effectiveness of our justice system and committed to make it better when warranted. Now, tonight's program provides the public with an overview of the work of the Kentucky District Court and the viewpoints of both candidates seeking election as the county judge. As a judge in tonight's race. Again, we will keep reminding the listeners on the radio some of the rules that we have going. Each candidate, you will have, once you hear a 15-second timer, you will be given 15 seconds to end. You each get 2 minutes to respond to a question that is asked of each of you. And if you are ready to go, let's go ahead and get started with our questions tonight. And our first question is, how would you explain to Generation Z, the voters, those born from 1997 onward, why they specifically should be very interested in who sits as district court judge? Stacy Kuntz, you will answer first.
Thank you, Charlie. I don't know, can everybody hear me? Okay. Generation Z is a little different than everybody else. For one, there's a ton of them. They happen to include my niece and nephew, as well as several of my extra bonus nieces and nephews. And I've discussed this with my nephew, who is 15. District court is important because it's the court you're most likely to encounter. Whether it be a speeding ticket, not that he's gonna get one, but whether it be a speeding ticket, or if someone passes away, there's a probate case that comes to court, or if someone in the family, for example, has dementia and they need a court-appointed guardian and conservator to help their management of their processes, manage their money. Those are all things that come before district court. So you should care, Generation Z, as to who's on that bench, because it's probably the judge you're gonna see. They're gonna be the one that makes these decisions, the person that you deal with. And it's the person who deals with what I would call the everyday stuff, the county ordinances, the traffic tickets, the name changes, the civil suits, small claims, all of that comes to district court. So if you need to file suit against somebody because you paid them to fix your driveway and they didn't fix it, district court's where you come. So I think that that's why they need to focus on that, because we're the ones that they're gonna see more than anybody else, hopefully. It'll be the district court judges. And I think they should care who sits, because it does matter to them. They may not realize it, but it matters.
Thank you, Stacy Kuntz. And now to answer is Patrick Bersani.
I agree with everything that Stacy has said about the importance of district court for our community. It is where the rubber meets the road. It's the most likely venue where the average everyday person will have to take care of some sort of business before the court. But going beyond Generation Z, I think everybody should be concerned with who sits on our district court judge on the bench in district court. And it's important because that's where majority of the people are going to have their interaction with the judicial system, and it's important to instill faith in our community that the judicial system functions and works. And the way that happens is by making sure that we have a judge in the courtroom who has the experience to handle the issues that come before the court, and to make sure that everybody is treated fairly with dignity and respect, because our communities deserve nothing but the best.
Thank you, Patrick. Question number 2. What have you done or experienced during your legal career that you feel will make you a better and more effective district court judge? Stacy Kuntz, go first.
I've practiced law for 22 years. I was a public defender for 16 years, and I was in private practice for 5 years. There's no aspect of district court that I didn't handle when I was a private attorney or a public defender. I've represented people charged with everything from reckless driving to capital murder. I've done probate. I did guardianship cases. I acted in family court as a guardian ad litem. I had done everything that they have to do, and I was the office juvenile specialist. Juvenile court is one of my pet passions. It's one of my, I hate to say favorite things about district court, but it's a place where I believe we can be very effective and help people. I was the juvenile specialist for 14 years, and I think all of those jobs, all the roles that I played as a public defender, all the aspects of district court that I handled in private practice, and now I've been appointed to the bench for a few months. All of that totals up to a lot of experience. There's not much I haven't seen, although Patrick and I have knocked on some wood today to make sure that continues to go well. Every now and then it gets a little odd. But I really think that 22 years worth of practice familiarity with everything up to and including jury trials in district court. They're rare, but we do have them. I think that that's what makes me the most qualified, and that's what I'm going to carry and what I do carry into the position.
Thank you, Stacy. Question number 3. As a part of your decision...
Charlie, can I have a chance to answer the question, please?
Patrick, thank you.
No problem, no problem.
Sorry about that.
We got to keep Charlie honest here.
Thank you, and we're going to be alternating these questions.
Sure.
Thank you, Joe.
Yes.
Okay, Patrick, you can go now, sir.
Thank you. So I bring a unique perspective to the bench if I'm elected to be the next district court judge. I began my career as a prosecutor, and that's where I learned to love the courtroom. I enjoyed being in front of circuit court judge in Ohio County, where I practiced as a Commonwealth attorney down there. You know, I had an opportunity to advocate for that small community, which, you know, fostered a love for the law that brought me back to Danville. I wanted to serve in that capacity in the town that I grew up. After doing that and having that experience in criminal law as an assistant Commonwealth attorney, I went back to my hometown and I opened up practice and I focused on criminal defense, which was the opposite of what I was doing. However, you know, since then I've gone back to the prosecution side. I'm working at the county attorney's office now, and I really enjoy the variety that we get to interact with as far as cases are concerned in district court. But that unique perspective, I've defended individuals and I've also prosecuted them as well. I think that gives me a unique ability to understand what a fair result is in the court of law and what a just outcome is considering the case, because in my time working as a defense attorney, I've ran across overzealous prosecutors that may not be considering some of the things that an individual is dealing with, but at the same time, I've also heard, you know, the ridiculous arguments that can be made as well. And there's a fine line there, and I think that there is an outcome, and I think that considering that unique experience, I would be valuable to the court.
Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate this. And you will have the first question now for question number 3. Now, part of your decision-making process before sentencing eligible criminal defendants with suspected or known drug and or mental health issues, are you open to seriously considering resource materials and information submitted to the court offering treatment resources and programs as alternatives to incarceration alone? Please elaborate, if you will.
So I don't think it's any secret in our community and in Mercer County as well that we do have an issue with drugs and alcohol and mental health issues, and a lot of times those two issues coincide with one another. So they're commonly referred to as a dual diagnosis situation. We do see that pretty frequently in district court. I've dealt with it in circuit court as well when I was in private practice. But you know, as far as being a judge is concerned, I think that a judge has an obligation to consider all possible sentencing options when looking at how to handle a specific case. They've got to consider the circumstances, how the person got there, what's going on with them. But at the end of the day, I think there's also a time and place for incarceration and utilizing the jail as well. I think since my time at the county attorney's office, the services at the jail have expanded. There's inpatient services that are offered at the jail now, and we routinely in the county attorney's office have allowed folks to serve their sentences in inpatient treatment through a rocket docket program that we've developed and we're currently working on expanding. So if I'm elected to be the next district court judge, I will certainly consider those options, and I think that there's some benefit to utilizing the resources in our community to try to address some of these issues. But we also have to make sure that the primary focus is that our, you know, roads and community remain safe for the benefit of all the citizens that live here.
Thank you. Stacy, would you like for me to repeat the question?
Sure, Charlie.
Okay. The question is, as a part of your decision-making process before sentencing eligible criminal defendants with suspected or known drug and or mental health issues, are you open to seriously considering resource materials and information submitted to the court offering treatment resources and programs as alternatives to incarceration alone? Please elaborate with your answer.
Absolutely. In 22 years, I saw a lot of folks, as Patrick says, they are dual diagnosis. They have underlying mental health issues that they have not been able to get treated for whatever reason. So instead, they're self-medicating with drugs and alcohol. It doesn't do them any good. It doesn't do the community any good. So we have, when I was a public defender, and then when I was in private practice, I put together plans so those folks could get some treatment. And the past few months I've been on the bench, I've signed several orders, gosh, I don't even know how many, to let people go get treatment, either through, while they're in custody, we release them to go to treatment, or as a condition of some kind of probation, as a condition of an alternative sentencing plan. And I would like to talk how wonderful our Shepherd's House program is. It is one of the best things that we have in the state. I'm a little biased, but I think it works wonderfully for both Boyle and Mercer counties. The people who need to go get assessed, they get the treatment they need, be it inpatient treatment or outpatient treatment. And I think that those are always something you have to consider, not just the mental health issues, not just drugs and alcohol, but what other issues are people having? In the end of the day, you have to balance those with everything else. Somebody may be severely mentally ill. They also may be a danger to themselves or others. And those are questions for judges to weigh. And I hope that I always come down on the side of making sure everybody's safe, not just the community, but the person as well. Whether that's incarceration or treatment or an alternative to detention plan, I will review all of those.
Thank you, Stacy. I appreciate it. Also want to remind you that the debate tonight is being broadcast and streamed live on Hometown Live Facebook page, Hometown Live YouTube channel, and ckytv.net on CKYTV2. And you will be able to go back and listen to the audio of tonight's debate. Stacy, you will answer the question next first. As a judge, what would you do if the law required you to make a decision that was against your personal opinion or beliefs?
As a judge, there's only one thing we can do. It's uphold the law. There may be laws on the books that I don't agree with. There are laws on the books I'm sure you all don't agree with. But the law is the law and you have to follow it. Whether or not it's something that I personally agree or think is a terrible idea or think, ooh, that's wonderful, we should do that more. It doesn't matter what my opinion is. My opinion gets set aside the minute I put on the little fancy black dress and go up on the bench. Judge's role is to decide whatever is based on the law, not our own personal views or opinions.
Thank you, Stacy. Patrick, would you like for me to repeat the question?
No, thank you, Charlie. I think that's the only way a judge should answer that question, and I think that's the appropriate approach to take. I mean, there's no reason why personal beliefs or political beliefs should play any role in applying the law. The law as it's written is the law, and there are actually statutes on how to interpret that written word as well. So if I'm elected to be your next district court judge, I promise to uphold the law by making sure that I, research the law and apply the appropriate rule given the circumstances. And if there's ever a time where I feel like my personal or political beliefs won't allow me to uphold that duty, then I will recuse from the case. But I can assure you that would be my primary mission, is to make sure that the law is applied appropriately regardless of who appears before the court.
Thank you, Patrick. Now, the next question coming up is a two-part question, and if you will please answer both as we give you the question here. From Patrick, now from your experience and knowledge, what have you seen as the most effective forms of treatment for deterring juvenile offenders from committing further criminal acts as juveniles or adults? Do you agree that the administration of justice is the judge's ultimate responsibility?
So to answer the question of whether or not I agree that the administration of justice is the ultimate responsibility of the judge, I think that yes, in a sense, making sure that the process is preserved and it's up to constitutional par and that everybody's rights are respected, that in my mind, that's what justice is. Justice is all about the process, and the judge is in a unique position to make sure that that system is functioning properly. However, it would be naive to say that the judge is the only one responsible for that. There are a lot of different players in the courtroom. I think that, prosecutors as well as defense attorneys need to be competent and doing the best that they can for their clients, and that all factors into that as well. As the judge, I think I'm in a position to make sure that that is being handled properly, and I ensure that I will do that for the sake of our community.
Thank you, Patrick. Stacy, would you like for me to re-ask the question?
Oh, sure.
Okay. From your experience and knowledge, what have you seen as the most effective forms of treatment for deterring juvenile offenders from committing further criminal acts as juveniles or adults? Do you agree that the administration of justice is the judge's ultimate responsibility?
I do think the administration of justice is up to the judge. The judge is the one who, as I've heard it referred to, calls the balls and strikes, make sure everyone is on an equal playing ground. The Constitution of the U.S. and the Kentucky Constitution lay the rules. It's the judge's job to make sure they're all followed by all parties. As for the juvenile part of the issue, the best program we've ever had, we had in Boyle Juvenile Court through what was then Comp Care and is now New Vista. It was a grant-funded program called the Juvenile Coordination Program. When that grant ceased, which was about 2019, that stopped. It is a fantastic program. I have spoken with the folks at New Vista. They have the money back. We could get it up and running again. Juvenile Coordination Program was a wonderful way to make sure that kids stayed out of trouble. It was a project that worked as a group. The family went to therapy. The kids went to therapy. The kids went to drug treatment. They got mental health treatment. They got all of those. The school system worked with the kids to make sure there were no further problems, because something like 90% of our cases came from the schools at the time. And the other great thing about it is we ended up with something like a 80 to 85% success rate. We never saw those kids again, and they didn't come through grown-up court. They did well. I would like to have the juvenile court program back. I think it cuts down on recidivism in juveniles, and I think it cuts down on their appearance as adults. I would also like to get teen court started back up, which is something we used to have with Judge Petrie and Judge Dotson. And sometimes kids don't want to face their peers, and sometimes they need all the help that a juvenile coordination program could give them.
Thank you, Stacy.
Charlie, may I add
Charlie?
something to the juvenile question? I think I neglected to mention that.
Okay.
Thank you. So with regards to juvenile justice, I agree with everything that Stacy just said. I think that the most important thing we can do as far as a community is get involved with these children. I think the schools do a very good job at trying to identify who's in need of additional help and services to prevent them from further reoffending. But I think that all starts with, it's a community effort, and it takes a village to raise a child, and that starts in our schools and carries over to our courts when appropriate. But, I would also support seeing the expansion of juvenile programs to help make sure that the juveniles are educated so they understand the consequences of their action and where that path's going to ultimately lead them if they stay on it.
Thank you, Patrick. All right, Patrick, continuing on, it's your turn on this question. In cases where a judge in the courtroom recognizes he or she is dealing with a manifestly incompetent or ill-prepared lawyer who is rendering grossly inadequate representation to their client, what role, if any, do you think that the judge should play in addressing such unprofessional conduct which diminishes the quality of justice in the court?
That's a difficult question. From one standpoint, if there is somebody that's appearing before the court that is grossly inadequate from the standpoint that they're manifestly under the influence of drugs or alcohol or something that's, obvious to the court that there's an issue there, then there's appropriate mechanisms to report them to the Kentucky State Bar, remove them from the case if needed. However, I don't know that the court's in the best position to determine the quality of counsel that an attorney is providing a given client. There are different claims that are available to any individual if they feel as though their counsel has been ineffective in any type of a proceeding, and the law provides for those, and there's certain procedures to assert those claims and ultimately seek redress for that type of an injury. But if it concerns the representation of an individual that violates the ethical code that all attorneys are bound by, then I'm under an obligation, as is any other attorney, regardless of if they're a judge, to report that to the appropriate authorities.
Thank you. Stacy, would you like for me to re-ask his question?
No, thanks, Charlie.
Okay.
There are places that you can contact. There are places that, as Patrick says, we have a duty to report if we have concerns that another attorney or an attorney appearing in front of us is under the influence of drugs, alcohol, or having a significant mental health issue. And I think if that were to happen, fortunately it has not, but if that were to happen to someone who was practicing before me, I think the first thing you have to do is bring them in and say, are you okay? Maybe they just had a bad day. Maybe they had a family member pass away and they're trying to function. Or maybe there's a drug and alcohol problem. And if there are, then you have to make that referral to the Kentucky Bar Association. You don't want to put anyone's liberty interest or monetary interest in danger because there is an attorney appearing for them who is under the influence of something. But as Patrick said again, that's a tough call on grossly incompetent because there are so many different issues. What if I see someone practicing a case, maybe that's not what I would have done, maybe that's not what Patrick would have done, but maybe that's how they're handling it. That's just how they're handling it. The question is, are they under the influence or are they having some kind of mental break? Those are the things we can watch for.
Thank you, Stacy. And you will have a chance to answer this question first. What two character traits do you think you have that best qualify you for the position of District Court Judge of the 50th Judicial District? Please explain.
I have the experience that's necessary. Again, I've been practicing law for 22 years, and I genuinely care about people. I want every person in Boyle and Mercer Counties to feel when they come before me that they have been heard. They may lose, they may win, they may draw, but I want them to feel like they've been heard. I care about what happens to everybody that comes in the courtroom, whether it's a criminal defendant or somebody in a small claims case, and I think that that's one of my best characteristics is that I do care about people, and I want the best for everyone in the counties. Our communities deserve no less. Everyone needs to be treated equally. They all need to be treated with honor, and justice needs to come for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Patrick, question number 8. In considering the pretrial releases, is it your turn? I'm really good at this.
I think everyone wants to hear about my quality.
I am very good. You know, when you're the last of 8, you never did take turns to do anything. You always took a shot and go right with it. All right, Stacy. Okay, sorry about that. In considering, as Stacy answers this first, in considering the pretrial release.
Okay, it's Patrick's turn to answer the one about his qualities.
I've got a few qualities.
Go ahead.
I mean, I don't think
Thank
we'll need
you.
to answer Patrick's quality question.
Thank you very much. Patrick, if you will answer, and you want me to repeat the question again for the audience?
Yes, let's repeat the question.
There we go.
Please.
What two character traits do you think you have that best qualify you for the position of District Court Judge for the 50th Judicial District Court? Please explain.
So first, I believe I have a passion for people. I care about this community, and I care about every single person that comes into the courtroom, whether I'm prosecuting them or representing them. Everybody has a story, and it's important to keep that in mind. You know, we're dealing with people in court. You know, we're not dealing with commodities. I mean, everybody has a story, and it's important to keep that in mind. And I think that compassion will lend me to be an excellent judge on the bench. Because not only do you have to apply the law, but you have to do that in a fair manner when you exercise your discretion. And that compassion that I have is something that I've always had, especially for this community, and I would like to put that to work for the sake of everybody. In addition to that, I also think that I have the appropriate leadership skills that are necessary to make sure that the court continues to operate in a manner that benefits us all. There's several different entities and agencies that the district court undoubtedly will have to deal with and make sure that everybody is on the same page when it comes to what the ultimate goal is, and that is to make sure that the Constitution is upheld as it's written and as it was intended to be applied, and that contains all the rights that we're guaranteed that need to be respected in court. So I want to make sure that if I'm elected, that's respected and becomes a paramount objective of anybody that steps foot in the courtroom, or for anybody that has any business whatsoever there. So,
Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate that. Now we're going back to question number 9. And as Patrick, you will receive this answer, or this question first. Thank you, Stacy. In considering the pretrial release from jail or eligible and incarcerated defendants, would you be open to seriously considering alternatives to pretrial detention in those cases where substance abuse, use disorders, or mental health issues exist or appear to exist? Please elaborate, if you will.
So this kind of piggybacks on the prior question when we're talking about sentencing. Pretrial release is important, and it's very important from the standpoint that from a constitutional perspective, everybody that appears in court that's been charged with a crime is presumed to be innocent until proven guilty. Now, there is a unique balancing test that needs to be applied there because, yes, we must treat these folks as innocent until the Commonwealth puts forth the evidence to establish the need to incarcerate somebody or sentence them for committing a crime. But there are certain circumstances where the safety of the public as well as the safety of the individual demands that they be detained until their case can be presented to a grand jury or until the case is ultimately resolved. However, when we're looking at substance abuse issues, I don't necessarily believe that the jail is the ultimate answer there. I've talked to many families in the course of campaigning for this job, and a lot of them that have had family members that were struggling with drug or alcohol abuse. I asked them the question, I say, what was it that finally caused your family member to hit rock bottom and realize that they need to make the change? And a lot of that comes from the support the family provided, but it was also being incarcerated in jail for, sometimes only a week. So I think that plays an important role in this question. However, when we're talking about substance abuse issues and mental health issues, there are plenty of resources available in our community, such as the Shepherd's House, that we also need to utilize, because there's no sense in having someone sit in jail where drugs could also be present as well, when we could send them to a professional or into our places that we know we've seen success before. So we got to balance those interests.
Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate it. Stacy, in the next question coming up.
Oh, I get to do the pretrial one.
Yes,
too?
you do.
Okay. Okay. We have in Kentucky something called pretrial services. They call the judge every morning at a rather ugly early hour, 7 days a week, and say, here are the people that got arrested. This is their score, because everybody gets a score as to a risk to reoffend and a risk to stop coming to court. And then from there, they go into what are they charged with. Pretrial is in a unique position right now because they've been selected in this district for Boyle and Mercer Counties to start eventually being able to refer people to mental health treatment. It's a new program that the Administrative Office of the Courts has just started. I think that if that person is, whoever's arrested, if it is safe for them to be out, if it is a possession controlled substance first, no other offenses, then they could be referred to some kind of drug or alcohol treatment prior to coming to court. You can make that a condition of their bond. You can make it a condition of the bond that they do drug and alcohol testing through pretrial. And that way you have an eye at least on what's going on, what are the problems, what are the substances they may or may not be using. So yes, I think that there are ways that you can do that for some folks. For some folks, they can't. There are some cases that are too serious and the charges are too serious and the person has to remain detained until at least their first appearance in court.
Thank you, Stacy. Stacy, you will have the chance to answer this question first. As a district judge, you will have cases where a party will be representing themselves, a pro se, that is, without a lawyer. What potential challenges could such situations present to a judge, and how would or do you deal with pro se parties appearing in your court?
This does happen every day in both counties. There are some people who choose to represent themselves and go all the way to jury trials on it. And then there are people who come for their arraignment, accept an offer from the Commonwealth, and work everything out then. The main concern I've always had about people who are representing themselves is, do they truly understand? Sometimes what you need is a tour guide through the law. I mean, I speak what I call travel Spanish, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be able to go to Spain and do everything myself. I don't know all those words. I know enough to get by. And somebody may know enough to get by, but do they know the legal terms? Do they know what that means? That's my only concern. And what I try to do is make sure when I am explaining things that I am as clear as possible. If somebody looks like they have a question or says, now wait, I don't understand, then I stop. Okay, what's your question? What do you have concerns about? And if they qualify for a public defender, I will always appoint a public defender for them, because that could be their tour guide. And I always make sure if they don't qualify for a public defender, if you wish to hire counsel, we can set this out a couple of weeks. You can have that person get in touch with the county attorney's office. Because without the tour guide, I don't want anybody getting lost in the weeds.
Thank you, Stacy. Patrick, would you like for me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
As a district judge, you will have cases where a party will be representing themselves, pro se, that is, without a lawyer. What potential challenges could such situations present to a judge, and how would you or do you deal with a pro se party appearing in your court?
So I think there are two components to that question. First of all, there's several different types of cases that come through district court. Some are criminal in nature, some are civil in nature. From a criminal standpoint, we have a constitutional right to representation regardless of whether or not we can afford an attorney. That's something that is explained to an individual at their arraignment, which is their first court appearance. And it's also something that can be waived by them as well. Now, typically when the stakes are a bit higher, say someone's charged with a murder and they want to represent themselves, well, there are a lot of different challenges that could pose to a judge. There is what's called a Ferretta hearing, which ordinarily would be conducted in those types of cases, where an individual would have to be admonished and made sure that you've got to develop a record that they understand that they're waiving that constitutional right. They understand that they are going to be held to the same standard as an attorney practicing the case. And in district court, it's a little bit different because the stakes aren't always that high. But from a criminal standpoint, like Stacy said, there are people that want to represent themselves, and they're entitled to do so as long as their waiver of counsel is done so knowingly and intelligently. And that all needs to be placed on the record, just to make sure that that protects everybody from an appeal. From a civil standpoint, that right to counsel is not present. So it's important that the judge explains the process to the extent that they ethically can to the pro se litigant, and make sure that they have ample time to retain an attorney if they so choose. And that's what I would do if I was a district court judge on the civil matter, is ensure that everybody's given an opportunity to hire counsel if they desire, but if not, I would hold them to the same standard as anybody else coming before the court.
Thank you, Patrick. You'll get a chance to answer this next question first. as a district court judge if a friend, family member, or legal colleague was in legal trouble and asked you for help? What would you do?
So first, I think any judge needs to look to the judicial canon and code of ethics, and I believe it's Rule 3.10 that states that no judge should engage in the practice of law. Now, there is an exception for that for, the limited purposes of providing, limited legal advice to family members and maybe reviewing a contract or some form of a legal document on their behalf. But I would exercise extreme care even doing that. If there was any chance that that type of advice to a family member would find its way into my courtroom, then I would obviously recuse once that person got there. But I don't know that it would be appropriate for me to provide that kind of advice, from the beginning. If it was a colleague or a close family friend, I don't think under any circumstances I would be permitted to provide any kind of legal advice, because that type of counsel would be considered practicing law. And that's important that our judges do not author judicial opinions outside of the court of law, and there's a reason for that, and the rules expressly prohibit it.
Thank you, Patrick. Would you like for me to repeat the question, Stacy?
No, thanks, Charlie. It's real simple. They need to go get a lawyer. The minute that I took the bench, I stopped being one. You do not get to give out advice to family, friends, colleagues. If someone came to me and said, hey, what do I need to do about this? And I've had former clients who have said, hey, what about this? I'm sorry, I can't help you. You've got to go hire somebody else. I can't do anything with that. And I think that's very important because it speaks to the independence of our judiciary. We don't have in Kentucky a second sideline business, being an attorney who does divorces if we're sitting on the district court bench. We hold that standard that judges are not beholden to any client or family or friend on any sort of legal matter. So they need to go hire a good lawyer.
Thank you, Stacy. Stacy, you're ready to answer this next question, and it is a long question, okay? The Department of Specialty Courts of the Kentucky Administrative Office of the Courts oversees the drug court, mental health court, veterans treatment court programs. These programs are similarly structured and supervised and have the same goal to give participants the opportunity to overcome substance abuse or substance use disorder and make a positive change in their lives. Currently, the Circuit Court is implementing the drug court program for both Mercer and Boyle counties. Would you support and advocate establishing and implementing any of these court programs for eligible adult and juvenile offenders who face charges in district court? Why or why not?
Yes, I've actually spoken with, we have a drug court coordinator right now. Her name is Denise Keller Gates. I've spoken with her about getting a misdemeanor drug court up and running. I know that AOC, the Administrative Office of the Courts, wants to make sure that they have their circuit court program on its feet before they branch out into district court. But we have referred a couple of people to drug court who have pending district court charges and pending circuit court charges. So if they'd already been sent for circuit court, we can send them for district court. I would love to have a juvenile drug court program. I'd like to work that in with the juvenile coordination program as part of it. And I think a mental health court would be wonderful. The state Supreme Court just recently started a committee. Justice Lambert, Deborah Lambert, is the chair on a mental health treatment programs and what they can do for mental health folks with issues in the Kentucky court system. I think a mental health court is something that would be a good goal. And if we could have a veterans treatment court, that would also be wonderful. But I think the specialty courts do a great purpose. I think they really help people, and I would like to see as many programs that could help more citizens that we could get.
Thank you, Stacy. Patrick, would you like for me to repeat the question?
No, thank you, Charlie. I too am in support of drug court. I know that it's in its infancy as far as the circuit court participants are concerned. I think the last time I spoke with our circuit judge, we had about 11 participants in the program. I think that they're seeing some success, but it's going to take time for that to, mature and grow to where it needs to be. But just like we addressed the answering the issues on substance abuse earlier, I'm always open to different programs and opportunities to benefit our community when it comes to dealing with this substance abuse issue. And I think that, as a community, we need a judge that will remain open to those. However, we also need to make sure that we utilize the programs that we've currently got. And we do run a rocket docket program through the county attorney's office that our district court judges have been very gracious with, and have agreed to allow us to do that. And by doing that, we've essentially deferred prosecution on some felony drug offenses to allow people an opportunity to attend inpatient treatment or outpatient treatment through the Shepherd's House, and basically prove to us that they are committed to recovery. And in exchange, we will agree to ultimately amend their charge from a felony to a misdemeanor and place them on probation on the conditions that they continue with their treatment and, remain free from committing further criminal offenses. I think that that is something that I actually talked with Chris Herron, Richie Bottoms, who's our Commonwealth attorney, and Jeff Dotson, our circuit judge, last week about maybe expanding that rocket docket program and transitioning to more of a traditional rocket docket where individuals will go ahead and accept pleas on the felony charges for those that may not be eligible to participate in the program we've currently got, but to kind of bridge that gap. So, and if drug court plays a factor in that down the road, I'd be open to it.
Thank you, Patrick. I also want to remind the listening audience and the audience here that this broadcast is broadcast live on AM 1420 WHBN, AM 1230 WHIR, and streaming live on hometownlive.net. Also, it's streaming on the Hometown Live YouTube channel and ckytv.net and on CKY-TV Channel 2. The next question will go to you, Patrick. Are there any changes that you would like to see made in the district court? And if so, explain, please.
One of my concerns is, Stacy touched on it earlier, but it was with regards to pretrial services and I guess the enhanced control that they are having over, criminal bonds. I think that it's important for the district court to maintain control over setting those bonds because each individual situation is different. And the court is in the best position to understand who those people are that are coming through on the dockets and whether or not they are safe to be released in our community. It bothers me a little bit that the current arrangement that we've got now, somebody could be released on a bond that was previously set by a judge and amended before they even come to court or before a judge even reviews that. So that's one thing that I'm concerned about. However, I'm in no position to advocate for policy one way or the other as far as that's concerned. That's up to our legislators and the executive branch to determine how they're going to handle that. However, I do have concerns about that, and I think that the judge would be in the best position to evaluate those types of bonds. In addition to that, though, I also would like to make sure that the district court remains to run efficiently and that any backlog of cases is eliminated. I know that we've done a good job. Stacy's done a good job working on that since we still had some cases that were slowed down from COVID. But that continues to be a priority, and we need to make sure that when we're talking about substance abuse, we're talking about DUIs, that we get those types of cases before a judge quickly so that we can take a look at what is going on with that person and address concerns by helping them get to the services that they need.
Thank you, Patrick. Stacy, would you like for me to repeat that question?
Sure.
Are there any changes that you would like to see made to the district court? And if so, explain why.
Well, I've discussed the JCP program and teen court and my hopes to have a misdemeanor drug court. Another thing that I would like to offer on the civil side is, and I don't think people realize, a lot of people realize this program exists, but there's a guardianship and conservatorship program that if someone needs someone to manage their money, manage their person, make their medical decisions, they come to court and petition for that. What I would like to set up is maybe a 1 hour training for people who are appointed as guardians by the judges. You know, if I appoint John Doe to be guardian for his mom, Mary, then I would like to be able to sit down with whoever else got appointed that month and explain what they need to do. You know, these are things you can pay out of Mary's account. These are things you can do for Mary. You cannot buy yourself dinner from Mary's account. You can buy Mary dinner from Mary's account. And I think that that would go a long way toward helping people, because when you are a guardian and conservator, there's so much paperwork you have to do. There's periodic inventories, there's lists of their assets, and I get filings that just look like, well, I don't know, but she had a bank account. It was at Farmers. There's some money in it. Social Security sends money every month, and that's how much is there. But I think that that's a program that we desperately need, and that I would like to see how that, if we could get that up and running and evolve toward eventually a statewide class for someone who's appointed as a guardian.
Thank you, Stacy. And you will get a chance to answer this next question first. While serving as district court judge, do you believe you have a role in bringing important legal or judicial issues before the public, the Boyle, Mercer County, or Kentucky Bar Associations, or the Kentucky State Legislature? Why or why not?
We actually just talked about this last week at the Fall District Judges Conference, because the District Judges Association has done more testifying in matters in front of the legislature, more discussions with the Bar Association. And I do think that as a judge, it's my responsibility to, if someone has questions about what the law is, to try to answer those as best I can. One of the things that I'm doing actually in a couple of weeks is I'm speaking to a class, and the class is going to come from DCA to visit our courtroom. So if they have any questions, we can answer those. But I do think it's important to educate the public on what the law is and what the legal issues are, without giving your opinion or letting your politics or your own morals and ethics come into play. You can still do that. And I think that that's something everyone should know. The example that they talked about last week was, if you remember during the General Assembly last year, there was a little bit of an issue about allowing attorneys to bring their own guns to the courthouse. I can tell you the District Judges Association did not think very highly of that idea. And so they testified. That's something judges testified from all over the state. So when there is a bill that comes up in front of the General Assembly, or an issue in front of the Supreme Court, something like that, that impacts courtrooms directly, how the COVID rules worked was discussed when COVID first happened with the state Supreme Court. Those are things I think judges have a responsibility to discuss and work on.
Thank you, Stacy. Patrick, would you like for me to re-ask a question?
No, thank you, Charlie. I guess I differ in my opinion a little bit. I don't believe that a judge has a position or a role in the policy making and the law making in our form of government. And that goes back to the separation of powers that I think exists for a reason. I think that it is a judge's responsibility to make sure that, you know, the law is upheld and the law is interpreted appropriately. However, when it comes to making the law and, you know, investigating what the policy should be when passing a certain statute, I think that is something that should be, it is vested in our legislator, and it should be kept there, because I think we have and everybody has an interest in keeping politics out of the judicial office. And anytime we're talking about making laws, that undoubtedly is a political activity that, you know, would cause issues if judges begin to get involved. Now, that's not to say that if you know, a judge was subpoenaed to the General Assembly to give testimony on a certain issue as far as what they're seeing in court, when those legislators are trying to determine, you know, what needs to be changed or what should be adjusted to make things run more efficiently. I think that's appropriate. I also think it's appropriate, you know, for there to be a association of judges where, you know, policy or law is lobbied on their behalf too, based on what feedback they're getting from the judges as well. I mean, I don't see a problem with that. But as far as, you know, a judge's responsibility to bring these issues to the community and to the lawmakers, I think that that's something that, you know, we should all be very careful with, and I think that that's understood based on the way the judicial ethics rules are set out.
Thank you, Patrick. And you will get a chance to answer the final question first. What will you do in your position as district court judge, both inside and outside the courtroom, to make Mercer and Boyle counties better places to live?
I've always had a passion for this community, and with that comes a passion for community service, and I intend on remaining involved with the community and engaging with the community. I want to make sure that I have an open door policy if I'm elected to be the next district court judge. I want every individual to feel comfortable when they come into the courtroom that they're going to be treated fairly with the dignity and respect that every individual deserves. And outside of the courtroom as well, you know, I think there is benefit to engaging with our youth in our schools and to make sure that we enhance our programs to tighten that nexus between the schools and the courtroom so that not only can students explore future career in law, which has been great based on my experience, but they can also understand what the courtroom is all about as well, which goes back to the issue of juvenile justice. And I think it's important for us to engage our youth because they are our future, and I would like to see this community to remain preserved for their sake and to thrive in the future.
Thank you, Patrick. Stacy, would you like for me to repeat the question?
No, thank you. I think the biggest thing that I can do as district court judge is to be active in our communities, although we are limited as such by the judicial canons. There are some things we cannot do. We cannot fundraise for any organization, for example, as much as, you know, we all have our favorite pet charities. I can't ask people to donate to them. And I think that that's something that matters. You have to be visible in your community. And as district judge, I want people to know that I am there to listen. I will hear them in the courtroom. We're limited with ex parte communication. We can't do that. But if you come into court before me, you will know that I will listen and you will be heard. And I think that's the most important skill that I can offer the community. I'll try to be a good role model. I try to behave very well so that we won't have any issues with that. I hear laughter. I accept that. And as I tell my niece every day, we have to be good, whether you want to be or not. So I think that that's the most important thing for communities, for the judges. Be good role models, be open, listen to people, and do your best for what you can.
Thank you, Stacy. Now, before we close our program tonight, the Boyle County Justice Advocates would like to acknowledge with gratitude invaluable contributions and assistance that has been provided to this program tonight from the Danville-Boyle County Chamber of Commerce, the Harrodsburg Herald, the Advocate Messenger, Hometown Radio Network, David Best of Best Sound Around from Harrodsburg, ASL Interpreters Emily Riley and Brian Grubb, and of course our videographer and timekeeper April Ellis, publisher of the Harrodsburg Herald. Also, Mr. Joe Myers would like to make a statement.
I'm the part of the program that's anticlimactic. I would like to say for the folks who did come in a little bit later, there is some information about our candidates. Part of this on the back, they provided some information I don't think they had an opportunity to talk about. So please, there's plenty of those over there. If you'd like to take one of these, take them home. For those of you who want to see most of you I think have this, but you want to see what these folks are running to do, as district judge, there's a lot of stuff. And it's very important. It's called a limited jurisdiction, but from the way I see it, it looks almost unlimited, but whoever wins, best of luck to you. I would like to also add that we, thanks to the Harrodsburg Herald Facebook page and Hometown Radio and the folks that are rebroadcasting this, we have included deaf interpreters, as you saw. We would encourage you, if you have any deaf friends, to let them know about this, the ability to see this. If you want to take extras of these for your deaf friends to read, please feel free to do so as well as these. So please, we want to make this available and accessible to both Boyle and Mercer counties. Also, I'd like to say we have a number of public officials here. I'm sorry we didn't write you into the program to acknowledge you, but anyway, we do appreciate your support for being here today, and I think that's a testament to the importance of this race that we have. Finally, I'd like to say that in working this, I've learned an awful lot from people, but it has been an extreme pleasure to work with Charlie Perry. Charlie is a man with a lot of knowledge and experience, and we feel blessed that you answered the call. I know the candidates were glad that you did. And Charlie, thank you so much for all that you've done. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank
Okay.
you, Joe.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you all very much, and I hope the next time we see you is at the polls. We'd like to thank Hometown Radio Network, AM 1230 WHIR, AM 1420 WHBN, for broadcasting live the program tonight. Also, if you can go to their website but like to hear and see the audio or hear the audio of this, it will be on file for a good while. Again, thank you all very much for coming out. Stacy and Patrick, thank you for having patience with me, and we wish you the very best in the upcoming election.
Thank you, Charlie.